Stephen, great to meet you.
Thank
you very much for having me.
Welcome to the Department for Health and Social Care.
It's a nice place.
It's not too shabby,
you know?
is it? Not too shabby.
It'll do.
Yeah.
It'll do.
Yeah, we manage.
I think before we get into the interview, I mean, I'm obviously from an exercise background. Exercise and sport is what I'm passionate about. When was the last time you exercised? And I'm not going to let you say in between meetings when you're walking back and forth, because that doesn't count.
No, proper
exercise.
Well, actually, honestly, this wasn't deliberate, but this morning, because every Tuesday morning I play five-a-side.
Okay.
We meet at 8 a.m. There's a sports centre just around the corner from the department. So,
how are you? Are you any good?
I mean, every Tuesday I hobble around for the office. Sometimes say to me, are you all right, Minister? You think I'm like, I can barely walk.
You're a little bit.
Because five-a-side's quite a lot of twisting and turning.
It's aggressive.
Quite hard on the knees.
Smaller court, smaller pitch.
Court, a lot. I mean, you've got to be fast and pick the ball up, move it on quickly. But I absolutely love my football.
You stay active.
I like going to the gym as well. So I've always needed to stay active, really. So,
it's pretty important. And you're Minister for Care.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Stephen, in plain English, for me, what does that mean? What are you responsible for?
In a nutshell, it's about moving our health and care system from hospitals and into the community.
Yep.
We have realised that there's too much pressure on our hospitals. Everyone gets pushed towards accident and emergency. There's people in hospital beds who shouldn't actually be there. They'd be much better in their community or at home.
Yeah.
And also, it's much better if the front door of the NHS, so pharmacies and general practice, work more effectively to keep people out of hospital in the first place. My job is basically that. It's about how do we work in what's wrapped around the hospital to make it work more effectively. So I handle general practice, pharmacy, adult social care, neighbourhood health. So this whole idea of bringing different parts of the health system together to get the front door right, and also to ensure that people flow through hospitals more effectively. And adult social care is an absolutely vital part of that.
That's a pretty big responsibility.
Yeah, it's a big brief. I don't know, it's lots of billions of pounds of taxpayers' money being spent on it. So you've really got to think very carefully about the decisions you make, and a lot of responsibility. But that's what it's all about. That's what politics is about for me. It's about being in government so that we can make a difference.
And I guess going back on your last point about the money and the NHS, do you feel if exercise was prescribed like, I don't know, medication was, do you think we'd have a happier society and maybe even a cheaper system?
Look, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but everybody says it clearly. Prevention is better than cure. It's so much better for people to have a healthy life for as long as possible. And I think it's brilliant that people are living for longer than they were some decades ago. But the challenge we have is to ensure that people live better lives for longer. It's about healthy life expectancy, and exercise and good food and looking after yourself are absolutely crucial parts of that. And we do, as a society, we all need to take responsibility for our own health. The human body is a machine, really.
It is.
And like any machine, you've got to look after it. You've got to make sure you're working it, building its strength, putting the right fuel into it. And that all, the big worry for me is if we end up with a society with a lot of people who are living for a longer time, but with chronic illnesses, you're just going to end up putting so much pressure on the National Health Service that it can't take it anymore.
And people are living longer. I mean, let's be honest, we're all getting older, and that leads to so many complications. But how do you want to see people approach older age?
I want people to think about it being not just the years on your life, but also the life in your years.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that every year that you live is a good year for you, that you look after yourself, you have family and community around you, and that your physical and mental health and well-being are as good as they can possibly be. And our health and care system definitely has to be there to catch you when you fall.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is get into a place where people don't fall, where they are, genuinely healthy, looking after themselves, making sure they're doing exercise and eating the right food.
Yeah.
And that's going to take much more than just politicians, standing at the lectern and giving lectures. That is about a movement. It is about creating a sense of responsibility to yourself, to your family, to those around you, and to society more broadly.
Like a societal mindset shift.
Yeah, it's a cultural shift. It's a big cultural shift that we have to make as a society.
And with that in mind, ultimately that'll bring less strain on the NHS in later years of folks' lives.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good byproduct of it.
Yeah.
What we have to do, I think, is not say to people, we need you to change so that we can save the NHS. We've got to say to people, you need to do this for you and the people that you love and the community that you're part of. By the way, I mean, most people in our country love the NHS and want the NHS to do well. So that is an element of it, and I think that's something that we can definitely tap into. Let's not forget, during COVID, people literally stood on their doorsteps and applauded our NHS. It was incredibly moving, something I think we'll never forget. But with that love of the NHS, I think comes also an element of responsibility for we're all in this together.
We've got to look after it. It's our NHS, and it requires us to be conscious about what we do with ourselves to make sure that NHS runs as smoothly as possible.
Absolutely, and we know we have to change as well. We know we've got to modernise the NHS. That's why we've got a 10-year plan for our NHS, which is about these 3 big shifts: from hospital to community, from sickness to prevention, and from analogue to digital. That is about modernising and changing the NHS, because if you cherish something, you have to be prepared to change it. But I think we also have to do a broader societal thing, which is, I mean, the jargon that gets used here is a bit techie, but it's about the social determinants of health. So the vast majority of factors that influence somebody's physical and mental well-being are not necessarily that they've got a particular illness. It is more about the housing they live in, the pressure they might be feeling in their lives, some people facing massive financial pressure, the food that they eat, the alcohol perhaps that they consume, are they smoking? Those social determinants of health are by far the biggest source of the pressure that comes onto the NHS. So many of the illnesses that people have are not genetic, they are caused by lifestyle. So that is a massive challenge that we have.
And so you'd say the happiness of society and the folks that sort of you look after and deal with is definitely a consideration in the next 10 years in the plans, away from are they medically fit for purpose, are they medically okay? The general well-being is something you're conscious about right now and thinking of?
Exactly, and that's what the 10-year plan is about, because that shift from sickness to prevention, or you might say from treatment to prevention, if we don't make that shift work, the rest of the plan will collapse. We've got to do all of these things together: sickness to prevention, hospital to community, analog to digital, harnessing the power of technology. I mean, I recently went to an amazing reablement centre in Doncaster, where they were using, exactly, I thought you might like that, where they were using technology where, to get people back on their feet and their bodies functioning again, and it was almost like a PlayStation room.
Felt like a video game.
It was like a video game, exactly. So they might be, to get the balance back, they were on a skiing machine, seeing the ski slopes and moving and getting their reflexes and their balance back. So it's that technology piece which I think is really exciting, because that's so different to where we were when the NHS was founded in 1948. A
lot of opportunity now to help people not get better, but better themselves. For example, the centre you visited, was it primarily older adults? Was it a mixture of rehab? What did you see there?
It was quite a lot of older adults in the room, but they were also working with people who had had accidents at work, and so obviously adult social care. And this is one of the things that worries me sometimes. I think a lot of people, when you say adult social care, because this is what's always on the front page of the newspapers, is what's happening to older adults.
What's happening to them as well. It's always a negative piece.
But there's also, it's also very much about working age adults who are living with disabilities. And that actually is about half of the budget. If you take it purely in budgetary terms, about 50% of the spend on adult social care is looking after working age adults.
And if we're going to circle back to older adults, it's, you know, what I specialize in and what I truly am passionate about. If you were to try and describe how you would hope older adults feel in this country, how do you think older adults feel they're being treated? You know,
for me, the aspiration, our ambition, our mission is to give people choice and control. Those are the two key words for me, because once you feel and your family feel that you've got real choice about where you're being looked after, how you're being looked after, does that work for you in terms of your life and your family, and you choose what works for you, and you're able to feel that you're part of a team where you have control, where you work in partnership with the care workers and the family and your family, and the GP often plays a crucial role. You know, so it's those two key words, I think, choice and control. And I think the sad reality is that there are too many people out there at the moment who don't feel that they've really either got choice or control, or neither.
And if you were to ask an older adult how they feel they're being treated in this country, what do you think their response would currently be? What would their reply to you be?
I think sadly, quite a lot of that response would be based on how much money that person has. So I think that there are wealthier people in our country who are able to get, you know, what you might call 5-star care, really totally holistic in surroundings that really work for them. And then I think sadly there is another cohort of people who aren't getting the care that they need and deserve. That is why we've got Baroness Louise Casey now working on a long-term project. In some ways, it's going to take a couple of years for her to report back, but it's looking first of all about how do we build a national care service. So what are the minimum standards consistently across the country that everybody should expect when they need adult social care? Just like everyone has certain expectations, don't they, about the NHS? You have when you go to your GP, you're expecting a certain standard of service.
You know what you're getting, right?
You know what you're getting.
You understand you've paid into the system, and this is what you're getting back. And
exactly.
And so that's what she's trying to create with this national care service.
Yes, exactly.
That's interesting.
And then the second phase will be about funding. So how do we get a fairer funding package? Because that second group of people that I talked about, they are people where adult social care is placing a lot of financial pressure on them, and that's not good for them, and it's not good for the country.
And so how do you see that working? You know, a system that caters to the older care of folks, because it's difficult for us, and I guess it's similar with NHS. You don't use the NHS until you need the NHS, and with older adult social care, you don't go into a care home unless you have fallen ill or unable to look after yourself. You don't use these services until you need them. So how do you see yourselves preparing society to put into the system to ensure that when they're at a certain age, they have those services readily available and to a standard that they expect?
That is absolutely what Baroness Louise Casey is looking at. I mean, as you'll know, the threshold at the moment is £23,000. So if you've got your savings and your assets are lower than that, then the local authority and the government steps in to help you with a care package. Above that, and you don't get that, or you get maybe some gradations of support. But that's the crucial question, isn't it? Is where do you set that threshold so that you've got more people in the system who do have a safety net and can rely on that support? You know, I don't think we're ever going to get to a position where adult social care is like the NHS, where it's free at the point of use for everybody. The big question is, how do you make the funding work so that it's fair and that the people who need support get that support? And that is a big challenge that Louise has. It, of course, is a big question for our public finances. I mean, we are in a very challenging position in terms of the economy and our public finances. So we've got to make sure that we balance all of this out correctly. But what we also know is that if we don't fix adult social care, we're not going to be able to build a national health service that's fit for the future, for all the reasons we just discussed, because we have got an ageing society. The system that was created in 1948, when mortality rate, people were dying much younger. It's a completely different world now. So we've got to recognise that, change the NHS, but we can't make that work unless we also change adult social care.
And care staff and nurses, they are, I mean, you'll admit it, they're superheroes without capes. And when we talk about change, what do you envision changing for them looks like? What will they genuinely see? There's a 10-year plan to be set out, but what might they expect to see change in the next 10 years?
So one of the first things is pay. You know, I know that care workers are motivated by compassion. They do what they do because they love to look after people.
Don't go into care unless you care.
No, exactly. And so I know it's not all about the money, but I also know that you've got to put bread on the table, right? And the sad fact is now, you know, care work is incredibly advanced, challenging, complex work. You need emotional intelligence, you need common sense, you need intellectual intelligence as well.
Some empathy.
Empathy, you need, is head, heart and hand, isn't it? You need all of those things when you're a care worker. And yet, people are being paid wages that are very similar to what you can get for stacking shelves in the local supermarket. Now, I think, you know, it's an incredibly important task as well to stack shelves in the local supermarket, but what we need, I think, is to have a pay system that recognises the skill level that adult social care workers have, that frankly there should be, you know, parity of esteem with the NHS. And that's why we are introducing the first ever fair pay agreement for adult social care. We are now in the process of setting up the negotiating body where the trade unions and the employers are going to come together and hammer out a deal, and the government is putting £500 million in. And this will be for giving care workers the biggest pay rise they've ever had. So, and it will also look at terms and conditions. So it'll be talking about a career structure. It's not just about recruiting care workers. One of the biggest challenges we have is with retention.
Retaining,
Because frankly, a care worker who's been in the profession for 5 years, their pay really isn't that much higher than someone who's literally been doing it for 5 months. So that we need pay ladders. We need a proper package in terms of terms and conditions, training, development, pay. So I think that's a very big piece of very important piece of work that we're doing. There's also other really good things we're doing around technology. So we've introduced this digital social care record, massive take up. I've been to visit care homes where I've seen how it's working really well in terms of sharing information about people who draw on care in a particular care home. Very helpful for them if they do need to go into hospital or GP surgeries. So I think, and the care workers love it because they don't have to then spend hours at the end of the day writing it all down. They've got a handheld device, put all the information in, and you know, it's brilliant, state-of-the-art stuff.
Stephen, when we talk about pay, do you think we'll see a cross-government collaboration? Because obviously pay right now is minimum wage in care. Minimum wage means that those that are getting those paychecks at the end of the month with tax thresholds staying at the same levels, although we are telling them they're getting paid more, they're paying more tax ultimately. So when we talk about more pay, do we talk about the raise of care staff coming off of minimum wage, or do we talk about minimum wage and thresholds changing to benefit care workers more?
Well, I think all of that needs to be worked out by the negotiating body. We're really keen that this is an exercise in what's known in the jargon as collective bargaining, right? So making sure that trade unions, particularly Unison and the GMB, who are by far the biggest trade unions, they are the voice of the workforce in those discussions. We're looking at how the employers come together on this. And then we have to be realistic. The government is providing £500 million. The question is how best to invest that. Is it better to put it into entry-level salaries to really drive up recruitment and just make it an attractive thing for people to do from outside? Or would you rather put more of the weight on better pay once you've done 2 or 3 years, you know, get onto a pay ladder, proper gradings like they have in the NHS? I think there's strong arguments for both of those.
Yeah.
But I think the answer to your question really does depend on what you do. Are you going to have a kind of retention-based strategy or a recruitment-based strategy? But either way, or you maybe sort of balance the two. But that, I think it's really important that the government doesn't try to micromanage that.
Yeah.
We want to give trade unions and
Yeah.
employers to make that deal so that then, they all own it, they all come together around it and work as a team to make it happen.
And to finish off, Stephen, for any older adults that are watching this, what do you want them to feel hopeful about?
I want them to feel that the government is passionately committed to making this work. As I said, so much of this is about quality of life. It's not just the life being added to the years being added to your life, but also the life in your years. How do we get healthy well-being, healthy life expectancy, health and well-being thought about in a completely integrated way? People for too long have been bouncing around between the NHS and social care. So we've also got a big
between them both.
And exactly. So we've got a big commitment to creating a neighbourhood health service where you bring the integrated care boards, the local authorities, adult social care employers, GPs, social prescribers, physios, pharmacists together to think in one way about this patient or this person who draws on care. What do they actually need? It's a huge task, but the government's very committed to it. We really are here, Wes Streeting and myself and all the ministerial team, because I think we feel that if we don't get this right now, there are real risks for the future of our NHS and for having a care service that we can all truly be proud of.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah.